Welcome to selfdiscoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of our Global Veteran Stories, right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy. My guest today is Andrea Blakely Holloway. She is married to a veteran, and she has a father that was in the army as well. So she's a child veteran, not veteran brat as well. I'm not quite sure what the terminology is on that. But they decided, she and her husband, that a lot of veterans just don't know where to go for the services that they needed. And they've decided to start an organization, and they're literally right at the seeding stage of it, of planting the seeds and building the platform for which to do it, to help veterans with spouses as assistance service. So we're going to find out all about that today. And, you know, maybe you are a person who is a veteran supporter and you wish to get out and support them, or maybe you are somebody in need of these services. And she's going to be sharing some of those services today and why it is important to look out for each other. She says her father and her husband both come from the military service. She believes all service persons deserve services and benefits that they gave their life for, which indeed they did. Face It, It's Your Time is a veteran to veteran with spouses assistance service. They need help with getting the right application forms. They also need to assist and understand what needs are replied to them and how to reply to the needs that are stated. In other words, understanding the documentation. At the end of the day, it's all about veteran spouses supporting one another through difficult times. She's a child of a proud Marine veteran, wife of a proud Army veteran, a long life caregiver. She stands for the gap for her fellow caregivers who are family, children, or spouses and caregivers. She's a servant of the Lord and a caregiver of the children, and she continues for the right of the services of men and women of all military spouses. If anybody listened to any of my veteran shows before, they know I'm an anti-warer. I always believe that we could try and find a different way to resolve solutions without sending people out there to die. But I have great respect for veterans and who they are when they come back, because despite very often the post-traumatic stress disorder, maybe physical ailments, most certainly not fitting right back into where they left off. It's impossible to do. There's a huge adjustment when they come back to living in this quote normal or dysfunctional world. And they know how to support each other. And this is the one things I really admire about veterans. If they see a need for something, they step up and create it. And this is exactly what Andrea and her husband have done. They've created this platform. So often people don't know, well, what's available to me? How, I don't know where to find it. I don't even know how to fill out this form. And very often it puts people off getting the services that they do need and that they really should have, because it's all too intimidating and they just don't know where to go. And she and her husband have decided, well, we're going to change that. And we're going to help people find those right forms, how to fill them out properly, where those services are. And it's exemplary work. They are at the beginning. So if you are a veteran, listen to this, or an association or anybody that cares, and you can help with building a site, or you can help with helping them build the structure of this for the work that they want to do, please do step up, and we'll be giving out an email later. Welcome to the show, love.
Thank you for having me, Miss Sarah.
My pleasure, my pleasure. As I said, I always find, when people step up to help each other, which is what I believe as a human race we should do, we are here to support each other, to be of service to each other, and we are all contributors in one way or the other. And when we have people who have put themselves on the front line, whether it be military or whether it be, police or paramedics or anybody, our nurses, our doctors, surely the pandemic taught us a great deal of how many people were on the front line the grocery workers, the people driving the trucks and making sure we still ate, all of that. We should be there for them. But very often the red tape is what gets in the way, or they just simply don't know where to find the information. Is this what led you to wanting to go down this path?
Yes, ma'am. So my husband um, was injured,
Mhm,
and I kept asking him to seek help at the VA, and he kept telling me that they weren't helping.
mhm,
And I wanted to know a little bit more why. So I went to a few of his appointments with him, and I realized that the conversation was very short.
mhm,
And they were like, well, you can go downstairs to the advocate. But they didn't say what the advocate was supposed to do.
mm,
So, with me being a researcher, I jumped online and I started looking up information. And I was asking him, like, did you sign up for this program, or did you fill out this form for PTSD or for hearing? And he said, well, I need to.
mhm.
And I was like, well, why haven't you? Because he came home a totally different person
Yeah.
than when he left. And I thought that someone should have been at the end of, his time giving him the information, guidance, and directions. And that didn't happen, he said. So I was very frustrated. And I heard the same thing from my dad and all my uncles. And I didn't understand then because I was like younger, but now I get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, since I've seen it firsthand, I've really wanted to help my husband.
Mhm.
And then I started realizing how many of my friends are military related. So I started talking to people and asking, like, do you guys go to the VA? And they were like, no, why would I? And I said, you earn those services. Like,
Mhm.
they're benefits and services that you deserve.
Yes.
Like, why would you give them away when
Yeah.
you put your life on the line for us to
Mhm.
be free? So,
And very often there's a couple of things that get in the way. Often it is, I simply don't know. And then
yes,
there is this other thing of pride.
yes,
I
ma'am.
don't want to admit there's something wrong. If I go for these services, I'm admitting something's wrong. And then
Yeah,
there is the frustration of going and just, as you said, kind of short conversations or being dismissed or pointed in another place and the confusion. And we've got to understand a great deal, many of our people come back with post-traumatic stress. I have interviewed colonels and admirals, and nobody escapes that in one form or the other. And
right.
it's a they could get out there and face an enemy with a gun, but facing the paperwork that's needed, or the red tape and the twists and turns and the maze of knowing where to go, and then kind of maybe other people not caring about the sensitivity of how they're presenting this, because there is a slight sense, which is completely false, but a slight sense that if I need this, I failed or I'm weak. And that's
Yes,
balderdash because everybody needs help at some point,
yes,
everybody. And the fact that they've been out there facing what they face and they're coming back here trying to fit back into life, of course they need help. Any
right.
human being would, but there is a sense of like failure in their part, and they need to be coached and guided through that so that
Right.
they, can surrender to the help that they need without feeling the kind of the shame of it.
You're telling the truth there. So I just dealt with my father. Um, he was injured in the military, so he was on a fire truck and it went over the cliff.
Ah,
And
with him in it.
yeah, in
Wow.
with him.
Wow.
And so um, the injury that he had, they ended up sending him out, and then it resulted in him coming home.
Right.
And so, talking to him when I was growing up, we had a very interesting relationship. I always wanted to know, like, what was he thinking? Because,
Hmm.
like, we would talk, And he would kind of, I could see in his eyes, like he wasn't hearing what I was saying, but he
Right.
was thinking of something. And I wanted to know where he was at and what he was thinking.
Mhm.
And then he said, sometimes when we watch our movies, I get a little misty eyed. And I said, you cry? Because I was like, my dad was my hero.
Yeah.
He is my hero. He was, you know, everything. And then I was watching the movies that we watched. So we always watch war movies
Yeah.
and we always watch cowboys and Indians. And,
Mhm.
and I was just like, does this make you feel like you're
At
still in the
home.
military?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
he said, I do feel a little bit more comfortable watching these movies. He said, does it bother you? And I said, no. He said, what does it do? I said, well, it kind of warrants me to want to go to the military because I was curious,
Mm.
but they don't take sick people.
Mm-mm.
So um, I said, well, if I can't get in the military, I'll do everything that I can to help.
Right. Good point. You've brought up a point, actually. My father was a Second World War veteran. He was a squadron leader. And, at the end of the war, there was only two of them left in his squadron. And my dad was the fighter pilot, so he was there protecting the bombers. He was there at night getting the spies out. He
Wow.
would be coming in with flames on his backside of the plane and landing.
Mm.
And even afterwards, he always felt comfortable around a bevy of men, the camaraderie. And, as other veterans have said, that camaraderie, it's life and death. They become your blood brothers
Right.
because you're so reliant on each other. And to leave that and come back to where other people are now reliant on you in a spouse or children or community, it's a
Right.
different kind of feeling. And my father would never talk about it. I mean, I was 11 when he died. He died too young at 45 of a heart attack. And I think a great deal of it was the post-traumatic stress of the war and then working in a family business with a brother he hated. So that didn't
Mm.
help. But we were beginning to kind of get to know each other. At 10, 11, I was at boarding school. He would come out and see me for the day. And we would be getting into conversations, but obviously he never got there at that age. And with his death, I remember speaking, but we loved watching Cowboys and Indians together.
Mm.
And we would watch kind of the whodunits and the Saint back in the days because I'm quite old, and all the spy type things, and I love them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Still do to this day. So I kind of that really kind of makes me think, oh, maybe that's the reason why he loved them so much, because it always reminded him of that camaraderie, where you have each other's back, and it's split second. Where here, he has to be more sensitive to reading the feelings of people or the needs of other people. It's different. And I think that adjustment is really hard. I had one gentleman come home and he had two divorces because
Mm.
with his third wife, she was a photographer in the army. So she would take photographs of people doing what they're doing. And they met. And then when he came home, he started commanding. And she goes, this is my camp. I command here.
Right.
I command here. You can't come back and start telling us what to do. And they realize the the need to disconnect from where you have been and adjust that there's a different commander and there's a different way of doing things. From that, they started a couples camp and a couple retreat and counseling where couples could get to know each other where they're at now, right?
Oh, wow.
Because the
Yeah.
spouse is behind.
Right.
You're fighting your own battle. You never know when you're going to get that knock on the door. You're the ones that are going to carry the whole burden with the family. You're being moved all the time. I have another one who is a spouse, a military spouse, and she talks about the difficulty of it, right? So you're both on a battlefront, different battlefronts, and you need to get to know who you are now and where you're at now. Well,
Right.
the VA doesn't offer those kind of services. So this is where this couple created them because they knew those services were needed.
Right.
So there is outside of the VA too of things
Yeah.
that you can do. Um, but yeah, there's a good point that you brought up that I realized with my dad, because I remember talking to someone else that had been in the Second World War, and I said, why wouldn't my dad talk about it? And he said, you imagine up there shooting people down, protecting bombs that are going to land where you know civilians are going to get hurt.
Right.
And it's life and death. And you say, how heavy do you think that is to carry? And I
Mm,
kind of then began to understand, that it's not something they can talk about, right?
right, right. So, my husband, he was special ops for 17 and a half years.
Mm. Right. Talk
And
about having
yeah,
to be on the beat every second. Yeah.
and they flew the Chinooks. And
Mm.
so, I don't know, we were watching uh, a movie, and actually it was a war movie, and he said, I haven't seen this one. And I just kind of looked at him and I said, okay. And a Chinook came across the screen, and he was like, I flew those. And I was
Hmm.
like, cool.
Yes.
And I just kind of sat back and watched him because I was like enamored with the fact that he was back there,
Yeah.
and his conversation changed.
Hmm.
And he said, I can't tell you everything. He said, but I I did some of those things that we're watching. And
Mm.
I said, you know what? It it's okay if you don't tell me everything. I said, but I'm glad you're home.
Yes. Yeah.
And, um,
But still, did he find difficulty in coming home, especially if he had to come home because of an injury, of readjusting?
yes. Um, so when he, like right before he got out, our national football league started to expand, and the Jacksonville Jaguars came about, and he was offered the ability to come and try out. But unfortunately, he blew out his knee in the
Mm.
military.
Ah, shucks.
So it
Yeah.
he didn't get to have that, you know,
A dream that he wanted to
he did,
follow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because he played football in well, he played softball, baseball, football, basketball in the military, as well as when he was in
Right.
high school. So he's an athlete,
Yeah.
and um, that would have been, like that full circle of, hey, I made it. Look at
Yes.
me. And
Yes.
I told him, I said, you know what? Even though you didn't go into the NFL, you still made it.
Oh, yes.
I said, you did things that people will never be able to talk about.
No.
I said, we we as the free people, we can't measure up to the things that you did. But I'm thankful that you did them.
Yeah.
So
Whenever I does, I mean, the war movies, and there's some very good ones. I mean, Spielberg is excellent at them, and the Band of Brothers was, brilliant, and a few others where they really do show the guts of war. I,
yeah,
I don't want the movie which is just showing the glory. When you have that beach scene in which war was it? Saving Private Ryan. 20
yeah,
minute beat scene where these
right,
people are coming on the beach. The bullets and the bombs or the grenades didn't care who you were, didn't
right,
matter. And if
right,
it was going to hit you, you see limbs falling off and this and that. And it's like, we con youngsters into the glory of it. They're playing a video game of the glory of it, but the
right,
guts of it
right,
and how many it can destroy emotionally and mentally, never mind physically. And that having a knee blown out, I mean, I have one veteran who was in a Hummy. The Hummy got blown up. All of his comrades were killed, and he was
mm,
burnt right to the skull. And
oof,
so, and his one arm was cut off. And so they say, they take skin from his butt cheek to give him eyelids. And he's become a comedian because that's the way he survives it, is being a
yeah,
comedian. He had to find that outlet, that other
right,
reason to live, right? And that's the thing. I think it's like, it's a different kind of fight. When they come back, it's a different kind of fight they have. It's more of a personal war. And
exactly,
that's harder to fight because you haven't got your comrades on your side fighting the same war. It's you feel solo and isolated. Whereas this is why veterans meeting each other and speaking, and actually veterans' wives also speaking together on how to help their husbands or reverse spouses if it's the women that have gone to war, um, and being there for each other. But the understanding of how to help each other, that needs to be conversed amongst a group of you and not just a solo act.
Yes. So here in Ohio, I was part of the group for the at the VA for the spouses.
Mm-hmm.
So there was myself and probably maybe two, three other women, and then we had some men. And it was very interesting to hear men say, um, my wife was in the military and
Yeah.
I was the civilian husband,
Yeah.
and I took care of the home while she was
Yeah.
away, and I took care of the kids. And I was just like, this is amazing to like see
Yes.
and hear,
Yes.
because I've always seen the men in my family go to the military, and the ladies were left behind to be the spine of
The
everything
home.
else.
Yes. Well, yeah,
And
commander of the house.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, they had to the schedule for the
Hmm.
kids and themselves, and
Hmm.
you know, and then like growing up, my aunt, it was very interesting to see. So my uncle was, out of the country, and they had a set time to call, but it wasn't a long call.
Hmm.
And, just to say hi, and he could hear my cousins, and I was like, that's kind of nerve-wracking, isn't it? And she said, you know what? Take the bitter with the sweet.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, okay.
I mean, it's um, war is a nasty business. There's nothing glorious about it. And, people come back triumphant or, they've got the enemy. That's all very well. But the price that is paid is extremely high. And I don't mean dollars. That in itself is
Right.
extremely high, but the lives and the ricochet effect that it has. One veteran that I interviewed, he talked to himself about being a junkie, having to keep going back because he
Mm,
couldn't find peace here. And it was somebody another veteran introduced him to yoga, and he
mm.
didn't want to do it. It's that sissy stuff, right? And he started yoga,
I
and
mean,
and it changed his life completely. He
right,
stopped going back and signing up because he realized he was so caught up in the adrenaline, he didn't know how to switch it off. He was like a sugar high. And so when
right.
he came down for that, it was a crash. So he went
Mm,
back for the sugar high. And there are so many aspects of it, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the the heart of what a person goes through, the spouse that is at home and the person out there fighting. There are so many things that are touched when you're
yeah,
out there that you cannot come back the same person. And we as a society have got to stop treating them as the person they were when they went. We've got to have a lot more understanding and compassion. They don't want to be treated as weak. They're far from it.
right.
Far from
That's
it.
right.
Even if they have, mental challenges, they're far from it. They're differently abled.
Yes,
And so we need to look at how we adjust the way we speak and the way we treat them, right?
correct.
And we treat them always as the hero because they've gone and fought for us. But how about we treat them as a human being with a heart and soul and
Right,
see that and nurture
right,
that and help them refine and rekindle that?
right. So that was one of the things I recently asked my husband about. I was curious, picking his brain. I said, so at what age did you enter into the military? And he looked at me and he said, ooh. I said, no one's asked you that, have they? He said,
Mhm.
no. He said, I left college. He said, and he was all of 19, 20 years old. He was still a kid.
Yes. So
And I
trying to
said,
find himself.
right, right.
Yeah.
And I said, so you went in and no holds bar, huh? And he said, yeah. He said, I was so excited because I wanted to work on helicopters. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay. I said, that's pretty cool. I said, but what else? He said, it was the like the thing to do. And I
Yeah.
said, okay. I said, so today, if you were to talk to that 19, 20-year-old guy, so what would you tell him? And he said, let me think about it.
Hmm.
I said, okay. I just waited and we were watching a movie. And he finally said, I would tell him that you're gonna see the world more times than you think. And everybody is not like here in Ohio.
Hmm.
He said, I would tell him that you're going to meet guys that are going to be closer than your family.
Hmm.
He said, I would also tell them, he said, that a loss is not always losing something.
Hmm.
So that's deep. And he
Yeah.
said, yeah. He said, sometimes I feel lost.
Yes.
And I said, well, would you like to like start reaching out to the guys that you were, in the military with? And he said, yes. I said, well, I said, listen, I'm a supporter of you.
Hmm.
I said, so if you need my help, I'm right here. And so we actually went and seen some of the guys that he was in the military with.
I bet
And
that
I
gave
was
him a boost.
it did. I was
Yeah.
so impressed. I was
Yeah.
like, look at this. And
Yeah.
he was like, he said, you've met my family. And
Mm.
I said, yeah. He said, but these are my brothers.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
okay. I was so excited to meet
Yeah.
them and to talk to them and just to hear their stories about when they were in Panama and in Korea. And I was like, you guys really had some good times, huh?
Yes.
And he said, we did. He said, but it didn't feel like I was away from home.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
That's why you
yeah,
see them, serving for so long. It's
right,
it's
right,
another family, away from family, but it's a different kind of family. And if it was more isolation, it would be different. It would be, I can't do this. I want to go home. I'm homesick. But when you're a group of people that feel like brothers, it's
right.
just a second home.
Yes. Because he said he felt like, when he went to college, he said, I went and I finished. He said, but it didn't feel like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm gonna do. No, he said, but when I went to the military, he said, I gained friends that,
Mm.
from all over. He said there were men and women.
Yeah.
He says, and we became a whole family.
Yeah.
He said, when they would get deployment, he said sometimes they didn't all get deployed to the same place.
Hmm.
He said, but then they were able to keep, a track of each other.
Yeah.
And just like just to see him talk about those days when he was younger and his eyes light up. I'm like, this is like that guy. I was like, you were really that guy. And he said, yeah. He said, we played in Korea, we played softball. And I said, you guys were just out there having a good old time. He said, but we knew we were getting deployed to go to war. He said, but you know what?
That's probably why they enjoyed
Think
the
about
good times so much.
they did.
They knew that it was precious. Any moment you could be
Right.
called up and now you're on the battlefront. So I think it was a sense of appreciation for the moment we have. Let's be present.
Yes.
Hmm.
And
I mean,
so
that means so much. Yeah.
I took from that because like when I would talk to my dad and when it was amazing to see like my dad who was in the Marines, my uncle who was in the Navy, and I had two more uncles who were in the Air Force, and then I had one uncle. He was just the guy. He went to college and he ended up with his PhD, and so he would talk to them and he would pick their brains because he wanted to know like, did I miss anything? And then he said, no. He said, I really didn't. I enjoyed going to college. He said, and I'm glad you guys came home. And
Right.
but to hear their stories, to hear the older people and their stories, I was
Mm.
just like, wow. Uh, did you guys like not want to be at home? And my one uncle, he was he just I mean, he was in there for 30 years.
Wow.
And I was like, you just kept signing up, huh? He said, I had things to do. And I said, I see. But when he would come home, I would go and visit with his family. And I really enjoyed just seeing him and again, hearing his stories. And, he was like, if I told you something, what would you think of me? And I said, what you want to tell me? He said, I might have been a spy. I said, oh. He said, what would you think of me? I said, I could kind of see that.
Hmm.
I can see that. And he said, okay. And literally that conversation just went boop. And
Yeah,
we
I'm
went
done.
on to else. But it was very interesting to like, I don't know, kind of peek into that world.
Yes. Yes, I mean, you were brought up with that world. You married into that world. Obviously, as I said, my dad died early, and so I was at the end of the war world. I was more in the repercussions, of
Right.
it. But it's just thinking of a person. I've got so many people I want to introduce you to. It's unbelievable. But there was one person I had on recently, Navy Real Admiral Kyle Kozat, and he was a person. He's still in the military, but he'd been fighting everywhere, right, for years, 30 years, right, in
Mm.
the career. And he fell down his stairs and broke his back, right? All
Oh,
those battlefronts that he did. And he fell down his stairs
yeah.
and broke his back.
Mm.
But even though he's in a wheelchair, and they told him he'll never walk again, and he taught himself how to walk, but his walking is very, very limited. So he's in a chair most of the time. And he fought to stay in the military because normally they would say dismiss. And of course, he couldn't go to the front or anything, but he's an admiral, he doesn't. And he fought to stay. And he's the first person in the military that they let stay that's in a wheelchair. And he commands from the wheelchair.
Oh, wow.
Right. So,
Wow.
I mean, he's like a brother for life type of thing, right? So, and
Right.
then there's Scott Husing. I've had him on a few times, Major Scott Husing, Save the Brave, and he's talked about he does a motorcycle ride from California to Florida to raise awareness of veteran suicides. And
Oh,
he's, written a book about one of the battles that were there. And he had um, he had the siblings and the parents, not of the people that died at that battle, but come up to him and say, thank you. I have a better understanding of what my son or daughter was facing when they
right.
died. And it just gave them more clarity instead of they're dead. Well, how did they die? Can't tell you that, ma'am.
Right.
And it just
Classified.
in seeing that or reading that gave them a little more clarity and being able to close the book on it, so to speak. So this is why these stories are so important, not only
Yeah.
as civilians, of helping us understand that every time we send someone to the front per se, and I'm talking about our police and paramedics and everything else,
Mhm.
they're fighting a drug war,
Mm.
with overdoses. I mean, here in British Columbia, the amount of overdoses we've had has just been horrible. Um, and we have all our veterans that have literally gone to war for us. And if we had a little more understanding, would we be so quick to send people over to war? Maybe instead of the warmongers who are behind the table sending people off, like, Putin has. For the
Right.
Croatian War, he took all the very poor Russian people, not the elite, and sent
Mm.
them off because they were disposable in his eyes. Right. So it's his war is such a distasteful war. It's a genocide.
Yes.
It's not a gentleman's war, so to speak, right? Because
No.
it's pure greed and ego and narcissism and psychopath. I mean, that's everything that he is. And as long as he gets what he wants, he doesn't care who suffers for it. And even
Right.
the Russian admirals and soldiers on the front are saying, we're coming home, we're not fighting. We've got no materials. You know, we've just got loads of people dead and there's no medical, there's no this, there's no that. What are we fighting for? These are not our enemy, right? And
Exactly.
so when somebody's out there, like I've interviewed people from the Vietnam War, and they say, I didn't want to go to that war.
Right.
I was sent to that war. And one guy was telling me um, that he was part of paving the roads for the machinery to get through. And he said there
Okay.
was a young boy there with a grenade, and it
Mm,
would have been his job to shoot the kid before he threw the grenade. And he
mm,
said, at that moment, he said, if I had to shoot that kid, I would have turned the gun on myself.
mm.
Instead, the kid ran, thank God. And because he said, and he came home, and of course, it was very anti-Vietnam at that time. So he came home and burnt his uniform and never told anybody he was in the war. He ran a
Mm.
successful business. And like 30 what or 40 years later, when he'd sold his business, he had time on his hands. He then suddenly kind of felt the post-traumatic stress, the everything else from the war
Right.
that had caught up.
Right.
You don't outrun it. You can't avoid it. You can't put your head in the sand. You can't go la 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 la. It will
No.
find a way to come out. And what you have to do is deal with it the same as you would on the battlefront. You have
Right.
to do, you're not fighting your post-traumatic stress. You're
Okay.
nurturing it. You're loving on it. You're supporting it to a point where it is not in command, you are. But you
Right.
can't fight it. It has to be done with love.
Right. Yeah. So the post traumatic stress disorder, my husband, ooh, it is a lot.
Yes.
I didn't realize it was as prevalent as it is.
Yeah.
Uh, so one night, myself, and the dog were in the house, and I sleep in the living room, and I thought I had my TV off,
Mm-hmm.
and I did, but I heard like him screaming, "Killer, killer!" And I was like, okay, maybe he's because he has this thing about horror flicks,
Right.
and he likes watching them, and I'm like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
getting a little too
not
gory.
my cup of tea either.
Like getting a little too gory. I'm gonna sit this one out, but so I thought that's what he was watching, but when I finally got up and I took the dog with me to make sure like
Yeah, it
there
wasn't
wasn't any
somebody
real
else.
problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It was him, and I looked at the TV and it was not on, and I kept thinking, well, I know you don't wake up a sleepwalker,
Hmm.
but how do you deal with someone who has military PTSD?
Exactly. Because you don't know what they're going to do in that sleep. If you touch them
Correct.
or anything else, they're in that sleep, they're in that battle, they can hurt you.
Right.
Right? Hmm.
I took the dog, went back around the corner. I sat on the couch for a little bit. I prayed. I said, okay, we're going to wait till the morning when he's coherent. And I said, hey, I love you. He said, what do you want? I said, I don't want anything, kind of. But I said, I would like to talk to you. I said, you scared me last night.
Hmm.
I said, I thought you were watching the TV, but you were dreaming.
Hmm.
And the things that was coming out of your mouth was whoa for me.
Yeah.
I said, and I need you to go to the VA and please ask to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And he said, is it that bad? I said, yeah, last night you scared me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And said, I'm sorry. And I said, no, you don't apologize. I
Yeah.
said,
It's not
because
your fault. It's a reaction. Yes.
right, right. You didn't know what you were doing. You were asleep. I said, but I just want you to be able to talk to somebody who is not your wife,
Yeah.
who will be able to say something that you understand.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say, yeah, I know what you're feeling. I don't know.
No.
I, I have no clue. And so he went and he found someone he could talk to. And she said, well, can I meet your wife? And I was like, oh, this don't feel comfortable. And he said, no, come on, please. And so I went in and she said, I commend you. And I said, oh, what I do? She said, you actually asked your husband to talk to somebody.
Mhm.
She said, most people just overlook it, tell them to get over it. I said, but I
Snap
can't
out
do
of it, right?
right, right. And
No.
I told her, I said, I can't do that because I love that man
Yeah.
and I want him to be okay.
Yes.
So,
What was the dog's reaction when he was doing this?
the dog was ready to like pounce on him. And I was
Yeah.
like, no, because I had
Mm.
to pull the dog back because that's not something that the dog was used to either.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because my dog was attacked by another dog that lived in the same house when somebody was there that was high, and the
Mm,
person was so strung out, it set
mm,
the dog off, and the dog attacked my dog. And
mm.
so when your husband was strung out, so the dog doesn't know what's going on, just knows
Right,
that it's wrong. The
right.
interesting fact is, another person I'm going to introduce you to, her husband was a veteran, and then he became a canine cop.
Oh,
And he was, I interviewed him. He was reluctant, but I interviewed him,
mm,
and he was saying that he's slept with a gun under his pillow, and at night he would wake
mm.
up and want to shoot the walls because he'd see the shadows coming out of the walls. And they got a dog, and the dog slept on the bed. And whenever he was like that, the dog would paw him. And he's never done that since. And now they're actually breeding dogs for children. I got to
Right.
introduce you to her, to
Yeah.
children or people of, because she was severely beaten by a
Mm,
military husband, not this
mm,
one, a military husband, so badly that she has metal and devices in her. And
mm,
she was pregnant, and her child ended up with problems. She's just had a hand cut off. And yet, what this
mm,
woman does for people and post-traumatic stress and abuse and everything else, unfortunately, and this is something I've seen way too much. I've done so many shows on this of the military defending the military people who are being victimized, other people, instead
mhm.
of dealing with it. Um, like her husband, even though the cops had so much against him, caught him at it and everything at it, the military came in and protected him. And
Right.
so and then they just dismissed him on full retirement
Mm,
instead of psychiatric care or accountability or anything else. And
right.
then she's got to deal with this for the rest of her life. But she's a very courageous woman, right? Who
Amen.
runs this Courageous Smile now. And I said, I've got to introduce you to her. There's so many people I've got to introduce you to because I know that you're going to find a synergy with all of them. But this is the thing is when somebody's been victimized, they've got to deal with it. They've got to face it in their own time, but with a lot of nurturing help. And nobody telling you to just, it's been depression. I
Right.
swear that 98% of the people that commit suicide, if you caught them on the other side and said, did you mean to do that? They would say, no, I just wanted to stop the pain. I know the pain firsthand of that deep, dark depression where somebody's come in and just pulled your heart out, pulled your guts out. There is no rationalization. There is no logic. There is no snap out of it. There's nothing intellectual you can do at all. It is a feeling that is chemical that is so overwhelming, right? And
Right.
many people will commit suicide at that time because the pain is too much and because they didn't know how to bear it. And a lot of that time is because people around them don't know how to recognize the signs and don't
Right.
know how or what to do about it or how to steer people towards the help they need. And this is
Right.
why some of the veterans I've interviewed are there to support the help people who feel suicidal, the veterans who feel suicidal. And we lose veterans every day to suicide. And a
We
lot
do.
of that is that disconnect at the brotherhood, or they don't feel they fit at home anymore because nobody recognizes who they are now. They're dealing with the demons. They
Right.
don't fit into society. They can't hold down a regular job because they're still on the battlefront in some way. And we've got to be more compassionate. We've got to be more understanding. We've got to be more sensitive. We've got
Yes.
to be more inclusive. It isn't just up to the government and the VA because we know that they're not going to be able to provide everything. And this is why
Mm,
I say I take my hat off to the veterans who saw what was needed and created an organization just like you and your husband are doing now. You see
right.
the need and you're creating a platform to help that need. And
Right.
people helping people. That's how it should
Definitely.
always be. But is
Right.
you're helping veterans because you understand they're different. It's like people of spousal abuse, like this young woman. She can help people of spousal abuse. She's been there, she's done it, she knows what's needed, right? So
Right.
when people who have been through it then step up to say, I understand what's needed, let's make sure everybody else understands what their resources are, right?
Exactly.
Now, as a community, we're coming together to help each other. And that's
Right.
so very important because they fought for us. It's now time for us to fight for them,
Right.
right? They're
Yep.
never going to be the same people they were when they left, but let's
Nope.
celebrate who they can become today.
Right. Right. So, um, my husband rides motorcycles. So do I. And he does an iron butt every year. So they ride 1,000 miles in 24 hours.
You've got to meet this guy. Yes, okay. Here's another one I've got to introduce. I'm making notes as I go. Right. Yep.
And so they're raising money for the veterans and the families who are in need. And so my husband said, I'm really into this. I really like doing this. And I said, that's good. I said, and I like helping out myself, with the veterans, but I also like helping out with the spouses because a lot of times, people overlook what the spouses have done.
Yes.
And they're like, well, yeah, that's his wife. And I'm like, yeah, that might be his wife to you, but that is his everything because he was gone and she took care of everything while
Yep.
he
A
was
different
gone.
battlefront. A different
Right.
battlefront. Yeah.
And so I am now talking to the friends of my husband. So I think most of them that ride have been in the military. And I said, let me ask you guys a question. And they said, what? I said, do you feel like you were debriefed correctly so you could come home?
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, well, they said it was time to go. So we left. And I was like, really? And so I said, and I wasn't trying to offend anyone, but I said, why is it we treat our military like we treat our felons?
Mm-hmm.
I said, we just let them go. Here you go. You're free to go. And I was like, sometimes they give the felons a outfit and a bus ticket. I said, what do they give you guys? And my husband said, nothing. And I was
Yeah.
upset because I told him, when you left the military, you should have left with 100% disability able
Yeah.
to work.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, but they didn't think that I hurt myself in the military. I said, really? So who were they looking at? He said, I don't know. I said, who did you talk to? He said, we talked to a series of people as we get ready, as we get closer to leaving. He said, and it depends on how you leave. He said, if you leave after, 4 years or, if you retire, he said, it's different. And I said, how so? He said, well, when we get out here, some of us get services like they get insurance, the retirees get insurance, and they're able to use um, some of the other resources that have been made better, I can say, or have been added because we go to the Dayton Air Force Base. And my husband said, oh, that's interesting. And I was looking like, I thought he saw some people or something. And he said, that sign right there. And I said, oh, the sign that says, we have counseling as you leave. He said, yes. I said, why is that interesting? He said, because when I was leaving, they didn't have that.
Mm.
And I said, well, who did you talk to before you left? He said, We talked to the people that we were supposed to talk to. I said, like commanding officers, or he said no, they were like HR people. He said, and they had the paperwork rather than my husband having the paperwork. And I said, well, did they show you guys? He said, oh yeah, we know what our records look like. And I said, do you really? So when he started to fill out his application to file for like his PTSD and his hearing and things like that, he said, hey, this isn't right. And I said, oh, I thought you read that. He said, they didn't show this to me. I said, so what were you reading? Because they had paperwork, you said. And he said, that's not what they showed me.
Mm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
now we're telling his friends that, hey, we need you guys to go and get your records. And we need you to either look at them, alone, or if you would like us to look at them with you, so we can write down, okay, what wasn't put in there,
Yeah.
so you can then get it added, and then you can get these services that you need, because you're walking around here with a bad back. We have one guy, his PTSD was so horrible. We do a camp out for my birthday, and the fireworks, I did not realize it
Yes, of
was gonna,
course. Yes.
but I did. I sat with him and I told him, I said, hey, let's have a conversation, like me and you talk.
Mm.
And I asked him, I said, do you go get help? And he said, why? I said, because you need it, sweetheart. Like,
Mm.
these fireworks are have you like literally pulling for a gun. You
Yes.
don't have to do that. And he said, I said, there's nobody out here that's gonna hurt you. And he was just like, but that's how it is. And I
Yes.
said, then I'm here. I said, I'm right here. So I sat with him until they were over. And then we talked. And the next morning, um, we were having breakfast. And he said, I think I'm going to take your advice. And so he actually did. And he's 100%. He's getting help. He said, I'm still workable. I said, well,
Yeah.
that's amazing. He said, yeah. I said, but do you feel better? And he said, I do. He said, I thank you for being pushy.
And that's but and you were a soft pushy. It wasn't like, hey man, you've got to go and get help. Push, push, push. It was,
Yeah,
I'm here for you. I'll help you through this. Because
yeah,
there's no point in telling somebody when they're in the middle of a crisis,
right.
in the middle of the chaos.
Nope,
They're not going to hear you. They're just going to be angry. They're in chaos.
right,
So you helped him calmly through that. And then afterwards, I got through this. I got through this with the help of someone,
right,
right? And it's like, well, that really kind of indicates I need someone else to help me through this,
right.
right? That it's okay to ask for help.
And that's where I was like, you guys not, you guys don't have to always be macho.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, actually, one of the greatest strengths you can have in the world is being vulnerable.
Yes,
Being vulnerable with yourself, being vulnerable with people around you that you care for, because that's the greatest gift you can give yourself and give other people, right?
right,
You don't
right,
always have to be on the defense. Life isn't going to attack you. And we've also got to remember vibrationally, what we put out is what we get back. So if we're
right.
living in fear, if we're living in distrust, if we're living in that everything is going to go wrong mode, that's the vibration we invite. So we
Exactly.
got to be careful what we seed, be careful what we water, be careful what we nurture before that is what will grow.
Right. Yeah. So my husband was, uh, it was funny. I had to give him this moment. He said,
Mhm.
I want to take you to the range and teach you how to shoot. I said, okay. And he said, you ever used a gun before? I said, I have, but no. I said, I'd like to learn from you because you have that resource I don't have.
Mhm.
And he said, okay. So we're on the range and he's putting on my glasses and putting my on my my little earmuffs, and I'm like, okay. And he says, "Are you ready?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Might have a little kickback." I said, "Okay." So he's just looking at me, and we're shooting. And he said, "Pull it in." And he looked, and he said, "I didn't, I didn't think you knew how to use a gun." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Headshot, headshot, headshot, headshot." He said, "And that was a far away." I said, "Well, I did take rifle and pistol in college." He said, "You said," I said, "I never said I didn't know how to use one. I just said I don't use one."
Right.
He said, "Oh, okay." And so he said, "Well, we can put a range, in our backyard." And I said, "Well, that would be fun." And then I said, "How about not?" And he said,
Yeah.
"Why?" And I said, we have wildlife,
Yes.
and the park is behind us." I said, "I will never know, if somebody comes back from the other side of our backyard." And he said, "You're right." So we haven't put one up, but he does take me to the range, and it's kind of a comforting
Well,
outlet for me.
well, for him, it's like you're with him, you're shooting with him, so you're one of the comrades. He's going back, he's got a comrade there. He's
Right.
getting it out of his system of being able to shoot it out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I can put the gun down now,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So, that's the important thing. And if the frustrations are getting out and I need to shoot it out, I can at the range, and then
Right.
I can put the gun down. And that's the important thing, is knowing for them to feel safe enough to put the gun down, whether it's
And
proverbial or actual.
right.
It's when to let those defenses down, which is really, really important. Um, what I find out from all the people, I've been doing this 11 years and I've done almost 3,000 shows. And for anybody that's gone through, and there's some people who have gone through things in life that no human being should ever go through, military or non-military. There's just some horrific things have been done to people. And post-traumatic stress, there was one stupid celebrity who said you can only have post-traumatic stress if you've been in the military. No, anybody that's had a trauma, had
Yeah.
something done to them that caused a fear or a trauma,
Right.
can have post-traumatic stress. But there was something that Gabriel Maté said on Jay Shelty podcast. He said, we've got to be careful with trauma and understanding what trauma is, and understanding what life experience is. And people have put the title post-traumatic stress to life experience and think
Right.
they have post-traumatic stress where you're just going through an experience. I suppose that they go through real trauma, which is life-threatening, horrifying, just horrific in the moment, and that can be triggered by different things in life that bring up that post-traumatic stress. And there are different degrees of it according to the horror, and also according how much we're able to release ourselves from it. But I think it's also, don't get it mixed up, because we all go through life experience.
Right.
Are we going to use that life experience as a lesson, as a discovery of how courageous, how strong, how many abilities we have, and who we're really meant to be, and let it help us become who we are? Or are we going to make an excuse with that life experience as I'm a victim, it's everybody else's fault, and I take no accountability? With
Right.
post-traumatic stress, when it comes to a trauma, it's a trauma that's now deep rooted. It can never
Yeah.
be completely overcome, but
Mm-mm.
it can be managed. And
Right.
and one has to understand the triggers of what can trigger it, and recognize when that trigger is there, pay attention.
Right.
What do you need to do in this moment? Because oh, that's triggered me. That was a life memory. No, this is triggering me. I'm back there. I don't want to go back there. What do I need to do? What skills do I need to do to apply right now that I don't go back there? And that's what we need to help them with, so they don't go back to where they
Right.
were, that they understand, okay, I'm feeling this, that I need to do A, B, and C so I don't go there.
Right.
And they don't get enough of that.
No. And so, like a lot of people, I always call my husband a mercenary, and I said, "Hey, hey, hey, can we not do that?" I said,
Yeah.
He is, he works for the federal government. I said, so can we just kind of help him feel like he's a civilian again,
Hmm.
rather than he's the guy who has to go back and forth and in the middle of the night. And he said, I don't want him to continue to live in that mindset. I
No.
said, because he's a very loving guy, and he's not of small size. So people see
He's a
him
big
and
teddy bear.
he is, and people see him and they're like, you don't fear your husband. And I said, if I feared him, I wouldn't have married him.
Then you wouldn't be with him still,
Right,
right? Yeah.
right. I said, but because of his exterior and what he's
Mhm.
experienced in
Yeah.
his military
Yeah.
time, he is very overprotective of me.
Yeah.
And so people are like, well, does that not make you feel uncomfortable? I said, you know what? I'm not uncomfortable with this man. I said, this man knows that I'm a small frame, but I'm a strong small frame.
Right.
I
And
told
people
him,
misconstrued that, do they? I live with a woman who's probably about 110 pounds, 5 foot dot. She's turning 90 in a couple of months' time. She
ooh,
still drives. She still runs. She's
ooh,
stronger than me.
ooh,
Right. I will say short-term memory is definitely going, but she could still, she's a judo black belt. She could still toss someone over her shoulder.
all right
So
then.
it ain't got anything to do with size. It's how we
Ah,
use
right,
our body. I mean, I'm a big woman and I'm tall. And so everybody thinks that I'm big and could cope with things, right? I could toss them because I'm big.
right,
But no, we've got to get out of this small size.
right,
It's the skills you use. I knew that physically I couldn't meet opponents. I had to use my spirituality and B, my intellect,
right,
manipulation, and look at
right,
ways of how I could defend myself, right? So it is this, oh, you're small and he's big, he's your protector, you can't do anything. If you needed to, you could do something, right?
right. Yeah, yeah. Because my dad always said, listen here, be independent.
Yes.
He said, I didn't raise you to be a girly girl
Hmm.
because he said, I wanted to make sure you were going to be all right
Hmm.
when you were not in my presence.
Right.
And I've always measured guys up to what my dad was, you
Right.
know, and I never found anybody until I found my husband. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah. He was the strength of your father, right?
yeah,
And the
yes,
honor of your father.
yes,
Yeah.
he's very much like my dad, which is hilarious
And
because
I married my father, but the weak side of my dad. I love the strength side
oh,
of him.
I remember introducing my husband to my father, and my dad was all, where'd he come from?
Yeah.
Who is he? And he just looked at my dad and he said, "It is nice to meet you, sir." My dad was like, "Hold up, is he trying to be friendly?" And I said, "Dad, you just met him." Well, I don't know his name. I told him. My dad said, "Well, where'd he come from?" I said, "His mother." My dad said, "Now, see, that's what I'm talking about. You're getting smart." And I said, "Dad." So I wanted them to meet again so they could sit and talk.
Yeah.
And my dad said, "I don't know what you did." He said, "But you seem to have caught the softer side of my youngest daughter." He said, "And let me tell you a secret. She's a handful." My husband said, "Oh, yeah, I know." He said, "But that's what I love about her."
Hmm.
He said, "She challenges me to be the best I can be."
Hmm.
And I saw the potential in him before he told me he was
Yes.
in the military.
Right.
I mean, he just like the way he speaks and how he holds himself. And I kept saying, there's something different about this guy that
Hmm.
um I haven't come across.
Hmm.
And yeah, he's really open. He's what I call the open, secure guy.
Yes.
He's open enough to give you like a peek in, but he's not going to let you all the way in because, like he said, there are things about him that he still has to keep because he doesn't want to have to answer to the government. And I started laughing at
Mhm.
first, and then I said, "Wait a minute, what does that mean?" And he said, that famous phrase, if I tell you, I have to kill you. I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
I love you. I love you. But yeah, he's
I have
been
to say, when you have an African American dad that is protective of his daughter, and the whole kind of um, inquisition that puts your boyfriends
yeah,
to a potential partners through, I always think is really, really
yeah.
cute. Clearly, obviously, I didn't have a dad around when I was dating, and um, my dad had an enormous amount of strength, but he was incredibly weak in other areas. And I've
Mm,
always been able to see the possibilities in people. I know they can do this. I see so much more in them. And it's either I've shown them who they can be and they go, bye, now they're it,
right,
or then they resent you for showing them,
right.
also. But I actually ended up marrying my dad, but the weaker side of my dad, not the strong side of my dad. And it was really interesting because my ex-husband is Chinese. We met on a different part of the world, different faith, everything. And I thought, totally different to my dad, and ended up being exactly the same in many aspects, which is really interesting. Um, but yes, I do love it when you hear an African American dad, the Inquisition.
Right.
You better look after my daughter.
And
I love it.
my uncle was the same way. My dad and his brother, I tried to team up on my husband, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute now." I said, "Y'all can't team up on him." I said, "That's not fair." And my husband said, "Hold on." He said, "Babe, I got this." I said, "Okay." My dad said, "Well, I am a Marine." And my uncle said, "And I am the Navy." And my husband said, "Well, I'm the Army, and you guys used to dance with each other." And everybody just busted out laughing. And I was like, "Hold up,
Good for you.
Dave."
Good for you.
I said that was definitely a military insight thing. My husband said, "Yes." He said that they were dance partners, and my dad
Mhm.
said, "He's a dog." I said, "Okay." I said, and so they have their little,
Yeah, banter.
banter, but the conversation is so interesting. And I
Because
just,
it's
like
their own
I
little
just,
cryptic talk, isn't it? Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, this is interesting. And my husband said, "You know what?" He said, "I like your dad and your uncle." I said, "And obviously they like you too. They know your name."
They
He
haven't
said,
dismissed you.
"Right." He said, "What does that mean?" I said, "Yeah, my dad and him kind of funny acting. I said, you have to watch them sometime." He said, "But they're good people." I said, "Yeah." He said, and then he tells me, he says, "Both your dad and your dad and your
Uncle.
uncle put me to the side and said thank you." And I said, "For what?" They said, "For marrying you." I said, "What else did they say?" My uncle said, "For slowing her down." I said, "Hey." My dad was like, I never thought she would get married because she's tough on people."
Mm,
And I said, "You know what? I married a guy who's tough on me sometimes
mhm.
because sometimes I don't see, how life is going. I'm just in the motion." And then he also like stopped me and said, "Hey, I just need you to be present for a minute.
Right.
Enjoy it."
Yes.
And
And that's going back to those games they would play when they had that respite. They knew any moment they could be called up. They knew
right,
any moment that maybe not everybody will be playing the next game. So they
right.
learned how to be present and enjoy that
Mhm.
moment. And they also had to live in the moment when they were on the front. So I think there's a few gifts that the military people come out with. One is understanding, being present, being in the
Mhm.
moment, being grateful for what you do have,
Yes.
because you never
Yeah.
know when it can be taken away. The other thing is the skills. the skills of precision, the skills of
Yeah.
awareness, the skills of how to do things. It doesn't matter if they
Yeah.
can't do
Mm-mm.
anything military when they come home. Those transferable skills is
Right.
what is so, this is why they can set up these organizations and do this and
Right.
do that. It was because of that precision, that focus, uh,
Right.
that sense of honor and everything else that's in there. Um, Out of all the people I've ever interviewed, there's only one that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And funny
Hmm.
enough, he never went to the front. He was a military guy that was at a desk,
Ah,
and
a
he
paperclip.
wanted, I think he was wanted to go to the front, and kind of
Mm,
was resentful he didn't. And
mm,
I found him some actions that he did were not honorable.
yeah.
Where afterwards been agreement that we had. But everybody else I've looked at, it's like I've taken my hat off to because of the impact of their story. Uh, the way it's not just them supporting other veterans because they understand, but they also understand the ricochet effect of supporting their community, of how
Right. Right.
everybody benefits, spouses benefit, children
Mm-hmm.
benefit,
Right.
community in itself. When they see something working, well, if veterans could do that, why can't we adopt that and do
Right.
that? And how it spills over and then becomes something that almost with military precisional flow gets done, right? But
Right.
but it's on peace front, not on
Right.
battlefront. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it does take people like yourself and your husband to understand, hey, if you've gone through this, and this is what I love about humanity, when you realize, hang on, if I'd had this, I wouldn't have gone through that. Or if I had this,
Yeah.
I could have done that.
Right.
And then realizing, well, if I was in the dark, others must be in the dark. We need to shed some
Yeah.
light on this. And this is,
Yeah.
this is what I love about humanity, when they realize the light needs to be shone and they've got the torch, right? And they
Right.
get up and do something about it. So you are right at your beginning right now. You're at your seeding. You've got this intent of wanting to help people and you're beginning to set things up. So right now you've just got a Facebook where people can
Yeah.
come to and an email where people can come to.
Yes.
But I'm sending this out to all of the military people. I've got a list here, right?
Oh.
Oops, I've just thrown it on the
uh,
floor. The list went flying by that I'm going to introduce you to, because there
Oh.
are
Right.
people that are already doing part of what you're doing.
Right.
And, maybe instead of you having to do something all up on your own, you could be a part of what they're doing as an extension of it. But I've
Oh,
got
that was
so many people for you to meet that who stepped up like you're stepping up. And
right.
that could be of great support to you, while you perhaps could be something that's missing for them. And that's the thing. Everybody, as I'm always saying, we're all instruments in life. We learn to understand what our instrument is, how to play it. We can play solo, but the object of the game is come together as an orchestra, each one in our strengths, creating a harmony that is transcending, right?
Right.
So you doing as much as you know and as much information as you have, and playing with the orchestra of other people's organization and what's missing in theirs. Together you create that music that really, really helps other people find their path. And that's what it's all about. So
Right.
your email that people can reach you at, hang on, let me get back to your page because I was on this other one. Your email is thanks for the number 4. You
Yes, ma'am.
are your services. Thanks for your services veterans. So thanks for you are services veterans at gmail.com.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
you do have a Facebook, which is going to be on here. And the Facebook link, oh, I lost it. I lost it. I have it here on your show page, so people can go to that and join up with that. And um, you will have a website and everything else. It's coming again.
Yes.
Anybody out there with a young guy that can set up their website for them and set up some information for them, great, because they really are committed to making sure everybody knows what
Yeah.
they need, or how to get it, or what their resources are, because it's not clear. And I
Right.
know if I have a disability and if I go into the government trying to look for something, it's gobbledygook. It's
Oh,
talking reverse language. It's like,
right.
how do I make sense out of this? And
Right.
what you do is you give up. So when somebody's very clear and concise,
Right.
this is the A step, B step, C step, D
Right.
step, and then
Right.
people are more likely to take it. instead of
exactly,
the maze that you get most of the time, right?
exactly, right. So my husband and I have definitely put ourselves on the front line. Like I said, we helped my father. He needed a scooter.
Hmm.
Now, my husband recently got one because he's had both his knees replaced.
Mm.
And so my dad was like, it's a little harder for me to walk around,
Hmm.
especially long distances. I said, well, Dad, you're a veteran and you can get a scooter.
Hmm.
And his wife was, well, we'll have to pay for it. And I said, excuse me, but my dad is a veteran. He deserves it.
Yeah.
So we explained to my dad how to go about getting the application, and you have to have your doctor fill it out, and then you send it in. He has a scooter.
Yeah.
My uncle, he's getting ready to, he just recently had eye surgery,
Hmm.
and he said, I got to have eye surgery. And the people that I've been recommended to, they tried to scam me. And I said, oh, that's not. I said, well, did you get a referral from the VA? And he said, what'd you say?
Hmm.
And so I said, well, maybe I can have a veteran talk to a veteran.
Hmm.
So my husband explained to my uncle that you can go into the VA, talk to your team doctor, and if you don't want the VA to cut on you, you have that doctor refer you out. And they have 30 days to do the referral. And then once you get the referral, you go and go from there.
And it's
My uncle
covered by the
said,
VA then?
yes, ma'am.
And it should be. Whatever
And
their
it's
medical things for life should be.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. No taxes and all that.
No.
But so my uncle says, I didn't realize the VA was as good to people as they are. He says, so I will definitely take, the information that you guys have given me, and I will start using the VA some more. And I said, look at you. He said, no, look at you. He said,
Hmm.
you stepped up. He said, and you're literally helping people I didn't know
Right.
before.
Well,
And he
that's the
said,
problem, is that we don't
yeah,
know. We
right,
don't know. But and again, if they go to the site and some people, um I'm dyslexic, so I go into some of these things and it's just phew, like a maze, too
right,
confusing. Just
right,
give me one link to go to. I've got to fill out this. For even forms are sometimes difficult for me. So if you've got somebody say, don't
right,
worry, I'll help you with that form,
right,
right? And then
right,
they can help you with that form, and then you can sort it out from there. And that's the
right,
importance of it, is having somebody that's got your back. And you think, well, they've been on the front line, they've done this, they've done that. Yeah, but
nope,
circumstances
nope,
are different now. And this
exactly,
is different now. And let's face it, whether the VA has these resources or not, they make it difficult for you to find them. So
exactly.
what you're trying to do is simplify it. And
Oh,
eventually you'll have that information on a website with A, B, C, D, eyes, knees,
oh,
this, that, whatever they need. They'll be able to click into it, know what form, where to go, and all of that. And if they need help, then you and your husband are going to be there to help them with it.
exactly. That's where we're at. Just talked to a woman last Saturday. She said, I'm an Army vet. I said, you use the VA? She said, oh no, I got good insurance. I said, okay, miss, I got good insurance. I said, but you deserve to use the services
Hmm.
of the VA.
Yeah.
And
And
she
maybe
said,
for things that the insurances don't cover. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so she was like, well, I don't know what my DD form 214 is. And I said, you can always get a copy.
Yeah.
And she just looked at me and smiled. I said, we're here to help. We're
Hmm.
not we're not trying to hurt anybody. We're not trying to be bossy or anything. But
You're an
if you
information bureau.
right, if you serve, we have resources and we would like to help you, get everything that you deserve.
Hmm.
So
Exactly. Exactly. It's the same with people of disability. I like to call people differently abled. But we have challenges, and it's sometimes we don't realize, because we have those health challenges of what we're covered for, because they're not going to advertise it.
Oh
So,
no.
they're not going to let you know because they don't want everyone streaming through the door. Ignorance is bliss for them. Um, so it's when you find out that, oh no, you can get this, or no, you can get that, you can get help with this and that. And it's like, wow, right? I did
Right.
not know. And this is, what words do we hear from so many people? I did not
It's
know.
not
All right.
right.
So you need somebody who is that information bureau, and you
Yes.
are a VA information bureau,
Yes,
are going
ma'am.
to let people know exactly what they need to know, how to get it, what to do with it, so they can
Right.
get what they need.
Yes, ma'am. And I do the research. So
Right.
I look in each state and I'm seeing because I asked my husband, are you guys like all across the board? He said, no. And I said, what? And he said, no, each state has something different.
Yes.
So when he said that, I said, oh, this is my cue. So I went in and found it and I was looking at, okay, what programs do we have that they don't have? And what do they have and I'm writing stuff down. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, I am literally going state by state. I'm looking at the different programs that they offer. And he said, and what are you finding? I said, there's a lot of things that Ohio does not have. I
Right.
said, and I think that there's a possibility, maybe, once we get a little more steam under us, we can start asking for some of these other programs that will help people because it's
It,
ridiculous.
well, yeah, it does. You are the United States. Right. And so therefore it should
Yeah.
be across the board on each
Right.
state. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Well, I think, what you're doing, and as I said, any youngster out there that wants to help them set up a site, which will be, state by state, what they
Yes.
offer, how you can get it, and then how obviously they can help you through any documentation or anything else that they can go through. Please step up because they're willing to put in all the due diligence and all the work. They just need somebody that can lay it out in a format that's easy to use. So
Right.
please, if anybody listening out there, a veteran or a veteran's kid, you know, it's this is teamwork, folks. This is community work. Let's step up and help each other. So you really are at the seeding stage, right at the beginning. You see
Yes.
the need and you're gathering the information.
Yes, ma'am.
As I said, I'm going to introduce you to a lot of people that are already doing great things. And you never know how either you can either synergize with them or, help each other out. I just know that you need to know these people and they need
Yeah.
to know what you're doing because perhaps what you're doing is something that will benefit the people they're helping in the way
Right.
they're helping. And so you could become a database for all of them as well. And they may be there to help you set it up. So for anybody listening out here that is, as I said, a veteran or not even a veteran or anybody that wants to help, remember it is it's about the coordinating of all the
It is.
resources throughout the country. We're only talking about America here. I know I'm in Canada. I'm always trying to get some people in Canada to come in and share as well. But in America, it's far more disjointed. And of course, we have medical here, and you don't have medical over there. And so many resources aren't covered, and so many resources are of veterans and they don't know it. So
Right.
let's get them knowing it. We want everyone, no matter who you are or what you've done in life, to step up into your full potential and your meaningful purpose and be the abundant, enriched human being that is a contributor to society. Right? We want
Yeah.
everybody to give the very best of who they are. And whether you've been shattered along the way, you're in pieces and you can only give so much of yourself at a time, so be it. So be
Right.
it. You will find that when you do decide to step into service, whether you can only give 1% or 100%, it will fortify you. It
Right.
will give you an energy and a pleasure that is so rewarding in the fact that knowing you're helping someone else. It's so fortifying. So for anybody out there, doesn't matter what level you're at, you want to help, no matter what it is you want to help at, step up because every single grain of sand makes a beach. It isn't one
Yeah.
grain. It isn't a one big fat grain. It's all those individual grains, right? So
Right.
let us work together. I really commend what you're doing, hun. And again, I'm going
Thank
to give
you.
out your email address so people can reach out to you. And it is thanks for the number 4, you are services service veterans at gmail.com.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
the Facebook, I do have it here on the chat. Hang on a second, let me get back into chat and it'll be up here. And the Facebook is Facebook groups. There's a whole lot of numbers here, but it's thanks for your service, veterans and spouses community. But it will be on her show page. So all you have to do, folks, is go to selfdiscoverywisdom.com and put in Andrea Blakely Holloway, and or everything that she's offering and everything that she's doing will be right here. And there's more that she does. Her site and everything else will be will be put up on here and updated. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you grow, having you
Oh,
back in a year to where you are and the impact that you've had. I had
from your
one gentleman who is a foster kid, and he came on, and I've since interviewed him several times, and like what he's done today. Oh,
mm,
because of being a foster kid, because of what was missing, the accomplishment that he's doing now, he never ever imagined it for himself, but the impact of what he's doing and what it's done for kids, for foster kids especially, it has been mind-blowing. So you never
wow.
know how far it's going to go, who it's going to help, the impact it's going to have. And that's the excitement. You're at the exciting stage, the exciting
Yes.
stage of discovery, right? So
Yes.
wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and sharing here today. And as I said,
Uh,
I look forward to having you back in the future, telling me the impact that it has had. And as I said to anyone else out there who wants to give a hand or has information, other information other than the VA that you think that the people need to know, please reach out to Andrea and talk. Just have a chat. You never know where it's going to
right.
go. And give your husband a big bear hug from me. All right. Good for
I
him,
will
for
do
both
that.
of you
I will
doing this
do that.
together. All right. Then, as I said, I'm anti-war, but I love my veterans who step up, who are
Right.
out there to help one another and to be an example, to everyone else. Is that despite how many times you may have been knocked down, it's the getting back up and whom you can serve in a different way. Right.
Right.
Thank you so much, love. Until next time, folks, remember it is all about community. It is all about us helping each other. And if you've got some information that other people need, don't forget to share. Share, because in doing that, you're showing that you care and you never know what impact it has on someone else. Until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tab at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.